Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Skull. Two huge fights. Pick one or go all in for only $90. Exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
This is Colin McGuigan for IFLTV, powered by DAZN. You can find the link in the bio. Canelo, Skull, Garcia, Romero. Deal on DAZN this weekend. Make sure you can get it $34.99. Edward, I've pestered you for 2 days. IFL got Benn, who was out working hard on Sunday.
That's a huge coup for you, that one. Big numbers. Listen, I have come basically from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to New York. And today I'm sitting here in a fantastic studio filming with Ariel Hawani, and yourself and Matt from Boxing Social have turned up to jump me effectively on the street outside. When I turned up today, you two were sitting on the floor outside the Ariel Hawani studio office. On the floor.
It's graft though, you have to respect it though.
No, it's stalking and it's quite concerning, and people don't realise that, the pressures of having people stalking you and literally following you around. It's not pleasant. But, I'm here.
Shout out Matty Lawless, best PR in the game. Edward, got a little shout out, it's true. Now you've had time to digest the weekend. Have you watched it back?
I haven't watched the fight back, no. I think it will take a long time to digest something like that. It was just the most dramatic, incredible night, but build up, obviously everything that happened. You know what it is? Sometimes you get a mega fight with a load of hype. I felt that because those two don't have world championships. If you get like an undisputed fight between two unified champions, something like that, it's not. I'm not saying it's cautious, but it's like it's calculated, and these guys, for me, I think Eubanks a top 15. Well, I think he's a world class middleweight. I think Conor Benn's a world class welterweight, but they're yet to prove themselves at the elite, like world championship unification level, and they just went in with carrying nothing on their shoulders of belts or, like the sport and if I lose, and they just had it, right? And it was just so unbelievable to watch. Like the fight, I've never seen more guts from probably two fighters in my life, and they both deserve a huge amount of credit, because it takes two to tango, and they gave us a modern day classic. But I don't think that fight will ever be forgotten. It was better than Eubank Benn 1. It was definitely better than Eubank Benn 2. And it was everything. Like, I feel like it kind of, gave me faith in boxing again, because I've always got faith. But, I think it felt like it gave everybody faith in boxing. Like even the naysayers that are like, I go to the big fights, but, I think they just watched that and they went, I love boxing. And that is, for me, like my number one priority always is for our fighters to win. But number two, and a very close number two, is that people that bought a ticket, people that tuned in, people that spent their money, left there or turned their TV off going, wow, that was amazing. And I'm very proud. I'm very proud to have been involved. Obviously super proud of Conor Benn. And I'm very, thankful and respectful to Eubank, who showed a huge amount of bottle and heart as well. I thought both young men were fantastic in there.
We'll go through it all, but let's bring it right back to the start. You said in our interview immediately after with Coogan, they tried to cancel the fight on the Friday night and the Saturday morning. What were you referring to? Is that just the glove situation?
Yeah, we received messages saying they're not going to fight if we wear those gloves. And we said, look, the gloves are sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control. And they said, well, then there's no fight. But that didn't get back to Conor Benn. That's just stuff that we deal with all the time.
How was that resolved, though?
We said, go on then, pull out the fight. And they went, I believe they spoke to the Saudis or whatever, but They just carried on. You know, you have a rules meeting, the British Boxing Board of Control inspect the gloves. They're gloves that every other fighter in Britain wears, or a lot of. There's nothing, but they didn't like it because it had some horsehair in it, which is like standard. Virtually every pair of gloves has got horsehair in it in some respect. And they just didn't want him wearing their gloves. I think it was the same gloves that Liam Smith wore when he stopped him. So, but in the end, we just said, crack on. And then it kind of just evaporated.
At what point did you know of Eubank Senior's involvement? Was it the moment that he got out of the car?
No. I always felt that there was a very good chance he would turn up, because I just felt like, I don't think he can not be, like, for him personally, and like more ego than necessarily the relationship. I know what he's like. That was perfect for him, right? Then I heard some rumblings that His Excellency was on the case, and I just felt like there's no way that His Excellency is not going to have Eubank there in some capacity. Like, he will do whatever it takes, and I don't know what it took, but he made it happen, and it was all down to His Excellency that made it happen, and it was just a jaw-dropping, iconic moment. Like, it shocked me because I thought he would do the ring walk, right? But how iconic was that moment when he just opened the car door and like that? And it was just, I was sitting front row, and I told Conor and I told the guys, they all had a feeling that he would be there, but obviously it was that moment. I was actually quite pleased that it was a couple of hours before the fight, because I do think, like, for Conor was very nervous in the change rooms the day of the fight, the day before the fight. Not in a, like, but just like, the occasion was huge, and it did, you know, I think it sort of just changed the energy a little bit in the dressing room, not for long, but it was like, wow, he's here. And as soon as I saw him, as soon as I saw those pictures in Conor's change room, I just went, right, I'm going back there now, and I'm not coming back out for Linda Arthur against Yard. I've got a job to do in the change rooms with Conor. And, you know, he was fired up, but that was when you just got to talk to him. And
so what, at that moment, you walk back into the change room, you've sat ringside, watched Eubank Senior in the car, that iconic moment.
Unbelievable reception. Did you see that? People just cheering for me. It made me feel amazing.
When you get back in the change room, though, to Conor Benn, what's the first thing you said there?
I said, see, he's here. And he was like, yeah, thought he would be. And I said, yeah, good. I said, you know, it means absolutely, don't mean a row of beans. He's like, no. I said, mate, one thing you get in your head now, this is a fight. You and him. Dog fight. And that was it, really. It didn't, I mean, I think the first scenes were like, but then after that, everyone was just cracking on with a warm-up routine. But we had I was pretty sure he'd be there in some capacity, but I did think he'd do it on the ring walk, which I'm glad he didn't, because I think that would have had more of an effect. You know, like, all of a sudden you're in the ring and it's like, because it was just that little moment, maybe 5 minutes, where it was like, he's here. And it was just like unbelievable theatre, wasn't it? It was like WWE meets boxing, but without the cringe and without the sort of disappointment of the hype, if you like. Because it just got better and better. Like Conor's ring walk with Nigel, Eubank's ring walk with his dad, all of them in the ring together. It was just, I actually posted a picture of the crowd today, because I haven't really digested it yet, if I'm honest. I came virtually straight from London to New York for this event. But I'll never forget it. It was like, I think when people say to me the new question of what was like your most memorable event or moment, I think that's got it, you know, because the fight was just incredible.
In terms of the fight itself, what did you make of, I know you were quite critical of the scorecard, you said you haven't watched it back. The reception has been, I think, a lot of people think that it was maybe closer than the four, but a lot of people had Eubank winning it. Where did Conor lose the fight for you?
Really, for me, it was the last two. I mean, I had Conor Benn up after 10 rounds, but he lost 11 and 12. And I haven't really got any excuses to say, we were, like, honestly, when I got in the ring, I thought, like, I thought draw. But I also did think, Eubank finished well. So no complaints. I don't know. I think sometimes it was a bit the same when Madrimov fought Crawford. You know, when all three judges score it wide. But in a way, that's good because there's consistency in the scoring. But I just was surprised that it wasn't a split or someone didn't have a draw or something. But no excuses. I don't think, you know, I think honestly, and I say this honestly, I thought it could be a draw. If you ask me, if you have to score it one way or the other, I'll probably give it to Eubank by a round. If you're saying to me you have to pick one, you can't have it a draw. Like, and that's me, you know, like being honest, because I just felt that as the fight went on, Eubank's size played such a huge difference, and we said it would. Remember, everyone said Conor's got to make a dent early, he's got to start well, and he did all those things. But Eubank's size told in the fight, and he was brilliant as well. Eubank, like, I can't, you know, it's not my greatest cup of tea, nor's his dad. But one thing they've both got is unbelievable toughness, and you have to respect Junior for that, because the thing you also have to respect both kids for, they both come from money. Do you know what I'm saying? And there's always this perception that you can only be tough if you've had it tough, and you know. But when you're passionate about something, and when it means so much to you, you can be much tougher than just reflection of your journey. Does that make sense? It's not like, if you want it so bad, if it means so much to you, you can be tougher than everybody else. And that's why those two need a massive amount of respect, because I was blown away. I mean, obviously, I'm talking more on behalf of Conor, how proud I am, but I give the respect to Eubank because, you know, and people say, do you think he would have shown that same resilience if his dad wasn't there? I don't know. But he's a tough kid. Whatever, you know, and he showed it. Listen, he was in hospital for 3 days. You know, I mean, like, it took a huge amount out of him, that fight, and he deserves a lot of credit.
Were you aware of the process that got Eubank Senior there? What actually entailed, what happened, and when it kind of kick-started?
No, I just know that His Excellency arranged it all. So I don't know the details of what, but, you know, however it was done.
Do you think he would have been like paid to come? Do you think it was just like a word in the ear from Turkey, or?
Let's just leave the romance there. You know, I think it's a better story if he came on his own accord. Eubank, but I'd like to think he came for his son. You know, and I do believe there will always be. Like, however he got there, you know, I mean, how can you not sit there as a father? I mean, you know, I think about if that was me, right, which it could never be. One, I can't fight. Two, I haven't got nuts that big. And my dad sat there watching that. He would be you know, like, my dad would not stop talking. Like, all this week, for the rest of his life, he would be playing showing clips. See my boy, look at this. Look, like, how proud must you be of a dad? And I hope that, you know, I said before, I hope that Senior is very proud of Junior. That was pre-fight. But what he saw, like, you know, unbelievable.
We've seen reports that both guys went to the hospital after the fight. I think you've just said there that Chris was in the hospital 3 days, wasn't aware of that. Do you know any of the inside information on, are both guys fully recovered, fully healthy?
To be honest, I had a bit of an argument with Conor because he finished the fight. He was exhausted. Like, 11 and 12 were heavy duty. And, you know, his face was okay. And I actually received a message. There was a lot of drama backstage because someone from our content team put a message in a group to say, Frank, there's a problem with Frank. And I'm like, what? And they said, he just doesn't look right. He's not in a good way. This is Frank Smith. And I'm like, and I said to Matty, I said, what are they talking about? And then they just replied saying, something's not right. He just doesn't look well. Something like that doesn't look right. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I've left. I think Frank has gone over. Right? Which, not being funny. Like, I know, like, we can laugh about it now, but you have to understand, like, the pressure of and the stress of what we do and that moment. And it's one of the reasons why I try to train, because I sometimes feel like if I was out of shape or I weren't fit, I think I could go over sometimes. You know, like in the midst of it, you know, when your head goes and you're having a row with someone or you're jumping up and down screaming, your blood pressure's like going through the roof. That's the moment. You've seen promoters have heart attacks. Frank Maloney, other promoters have heart attacks like in that moment. So I now think Frank Smith has gone over. He's had a heart attack. So I'm running to the other. They said, oh, he's by Eubanks change room. So I've left Conor Benn's change room. I'm running. You saw me. I was running down there. Where's Frank? Where's Frank? And then it just turns out that obviously the Eubank family were distressed because Chris didn't feel great, and Frank was concerned for that, obviously with Emily and stuff like that. And then I bumped into Frank and went, "You're all right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "They just said you didn't look right." He said, "No, obviously I'm worried." Obviously, I was
Who
like,
was the culprit in the content team?
Sean. Is that his name? Yeah, Sean. It was you, Sean. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. So anyway, so I'm like, "Oh, for God's sake." So anyway, go back to Conor's change room. Eubank gets taken straight to hospital. We were told Eubank's got a broken jaw. I don't know who said that, but that's what the media told us. And if you look at the pictures, his face was battered. Go back into Conor's change room. We were in there for ages. We then done the presser. And just like as you become more exhausted, I just said to I said, right, we're going to make a move from the stadium. And I said, "You all right?" And he went, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "I think you should go to hospital." And he went, I think you should just go. He was like, "Honestly, I'm fine." And then I think Victoria, his wife, said, "Do you want to go?" So he just popped in, had a quick scan, and then left. But they were apparently 2 or 3 beds down from each other. And I think obviously Eubank was in there Saturday, Sunday. I think he came out Monday. And it was, listen, that fight takes miles off the clock, you know? And yeah, just obviously over the moon. Both fighters are.
Did they speak at all? Do you know since?
I'm not sure. Since, I don't know. Conor's coming out here. I mean, Conor's like, honestly, like, I hate losing. You know how much I hate losing, right? But there was a little bit of kind of like, I never really felt, I promise this, after the fight, even now, I don't feel the pain of defeat. Like, obviously I wanted him to win, but I'm so proud of him. And I'm so pleased with the redemption, number one. But 2, the size of his star that's shining. He's just like, you know, these guys, fly Conor Benn out. We want Conor Benn here. You know, plans for big fights. Obviously, the rematch, you know, like, he's become a star, that young man, and he deserves it. He works his nuts off, and he showed unbelievable heart. And people love that. He never stopped trying to win the fight. You know, when he's getting bashed up in 11 and 12, never stopped throwing, did he? He'd take a breath, soak it up, and he'd go again. And it was phenomenal.
In the aftermath, I won't say who, but we spoke to someone who's quite, me and Coogan, involved, and they said that the rematch is on the exact same terms. Do you believe that the rematch definitely happens?
I think it would be disrespectful of me to say I don't think Eubank will want it. But I don't know. I mean, if you thought that fight was brutal, wait till you see the rematch. Because Conor Benn will come a different animal. He was 14 months out of the ring, right? He, you know, that camp was his first fight at middleweight. And we're not middleweights, right? I think he could fight at 54, but he's a 147 pounder, right? But like, he's back in the gym now. And he will come as a different animal in a rematch. So in answer to your question, do I think Eubank... I mean, basically, Eubank has to take the rematch or retire. If he retired, I mean, he's had a great career. Like, he's just coming off a massive win in one of the great fights, you know. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's for Team Eubank and those guys. But yeah, the reason that we took the fight is because it was a 2-fight deal. So those terms are set. And we're ready. You know, Conor Benn's he's ready to go back into camp, but he's young, he's fresh, he's he wants revenge, and it will be a different fight this time.
Devil's advocate here. What if Eubank says, you know, I want the rematch, but I can't do that restriction on the weight again. I can't do the rehydration. Would you still consider it?
Well, that's an issue because he signed to do it, but obviously we've got to make sure that his health is in check. But he signed a deal to do the 2 fights, and we know the terms of that deal. So we'll see. Look, it's early, isn't it? Like,
it is early, but whenever it's been announced that it's going to be in September, it's not really early then, because you're looking at probably July to go back into camp.
Yeah, but it's April, so you've got May and June. You've got 9 or 10 weeks off now till you've got to go back into camp. But we don't, like, obviously from our side, and I said in the press conference after, because His Excellency and those guys said, "Oh, I saw your comments. Like, you said he might go down to 147. We have an agreement." But I said, no, look, I'm just saying, and this is the same if you're looking after Eubank right now. That was a brutal fight. You don't want too many fights like that. And it doesn't piss me off because it is what it is. But no one really talks about Conor Benn going up and fighting this guy who has had a stone on him in the ring, and how dangerous it is for Conor. I don't want Conor Benn to have loads of fights like that. Those kind of fights shorten your career. And, those guys said, no, we have a 2-fight deal. I said, I know, and obviously we're going to honour that. But my concern is not for Eubank Jr. I want him to be 100%. I want him to be healthy. But that's his team. So all I can tell you is my instruction from my client. I won't tell you what he actually said, but what he said was, wait till you see me in this rematch. And when he said it to me and I looked in his eyes, I thought, oh, fuck, you're coming on another level for this one. So we're ready, September. Let's go.
In terms of comments on the fight, Billy Nelson had a bit of a pop at you on Twitter, and you replied to him. What did you make of his comments?
I can't even remember what he said. Moaning about, like, all these people that moaned, right? The reality is, we got it perfectly right. And you have to understand one thing. I know I get the blame for absolutely everything, right? I didn't negotiate this fight. Chris Eubank and Benn this wasn't a deal between us. This was a deal where Benn had to negotiate with Ring Magazine, Saudi Arabia, their deal, right? And we negotiated our deal with Ring Magazine, okay? Now, what was said was this fight was originally at 157. Do you know why the fight was originally at 157, first of all? Because Chris Eubank agreed, in principle, to fight Kell Brook at 157. That was the whole thing. And we said, well, we'll do the fight at 157. It wasn't us saying to Team Eubank, you must make 157. They'd already agreed to do it in principle with Kell Brook, and we just carried that on. Now, that fight never happened. Then we said, okay, we'll do it your weight, 160, right? The original hydration was £9, this was £10. But those terms were negotiated. Saudi would come to us and say, are you happy with 160 and a £10 hydration? And we'd say, yes, we are. Then they would go back to Team Eubank.
So you didn't actually make the fight or make the request to have the rehydration? Because I think everyone's getting that wrong.
We didn't do the contract. Apparently you saw, this isn't a Matchroom show, this isn't a box show, this is a Ring Magazine show. All the contracts were done individually with them. So we never said to Eubank, you must make this. We said, this is what we're comfortable with. Now, if you want to come back to us and like they could have come back and gone 161 and £11, but they didn't. They come back and said, we spoke to Team Eubank, that's acceptable, fight's on. That's it. So I know that I was like, I made him, I didn't do anything. Never had a conversation with him. Never had a conversation with Benn. We spoke to the Ring Magazine and Seller about what we're happy with, and they asked us if we're happy with that. We said yes, and then the fight was made. So, and the fight, the same terms, apply for the rematch. That's it. So, and I don't think, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I don't think the hydration clause caused him any bother. What caused him the bother was 160, which, I think that was his 6th fight in a row at 160. It's his natural weight. He's IBO world champion at middleweight. They just messed up on the timing. That's all. If they would have got the timing right, they would have made weight easy. Not easy, it's hard for everybody, but you know what I'm saying? The reason that was, it's half an ounce, he turned up an hour late. So, and all this stuff. Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Some of the things that were said at the weigh-in, I did go a little bit Frank Warren mode, and I was like, you got to send a leak, because these people, they say stuff like they closed off the scales, the weights, they wouldn't let me urinate. It's I was in the room, and I had to go at Shalom because he was saying, they were all laughing and pointing. I said, and I texted him. I said, what are you talking about? We were laughing and pointing. I said, you weren't even in the room. I was in the room. I said, no, you came into the room and then you left the room. I went to get a towel. I said, what? You're talking about things that happened in the room. You weren't even there. And then he said, oh no, because it was one representative from Boxer, I said, yeah, you run Boxer, mate. That's your fighter. You don't leave that room when your fighter's in the scales, and especially when he's struggling. So, and the fact is, this is another thing that drives me mad, because, again, do you think that we run the regulations of a weigh-in? There's a governing body called the Baldy. There's a governing body, Gary Baldy. There's a governing body called British Boxing Body of Control, right? And they oversee the weights. So, the scales calibrated? Yes, you tits. The scales were calibrated, and there was a certificate for calibration that was given to British Boxing Board of Control. We do things right. They oversee. They said to Eubank, you're an hour late. You've got 11 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever it is. Not Eddie Hearn with his iPhone clock going, all right, Eubank, yeah, no, too late, mate. Sorry, $500,000, done. I mean, anyway. So, yeah, it was a dramatic moment, dramatic day. That was Friday. But the whole thing, like, you couldn't have written a better script.
We're trying to end this for about 5 minutes because I know you have to go on RL Havana here. So, really appreciate your time, Edward, and I'm sure we'll catch up again this week. Every day, twice.
And twice on a Sunday.
3 times Sunday.
See you in a bit.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Skull. 2 huge fights. Pick one or go all in for only $90. Exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.